I'm worried about how willing Republicans in Congress have been to abdicate their role as members of a co-equal branch of government, and how they refuse to buck the president even when they know he's out of line. Even when a lot of them privately admit that power is being abused in ways that will hurt their constituents, that will hurt the country. I worry about a Supreme Court that so far at least has shown no willingness to check this administration's excesses. Even when those actions break all legal precedent and seem to defy the bedrock principle that no one's above the law. I worry about the growing concentration of economic power in the country, with just a handful of mega billionaires and companies controlling what we see and what we hear. I worry about how much that economic power distorts our political process. I worry about how readily, not just business leaders, but others with influence in law firms and universities, have been willing to bend the knee to this president's autocratic impulses to avoid retribution or protect profits or just to avoid controversy. What I also tell people who ask, what I remind them, is that this contest of ideas, it's not new. America's always had competing stories about who we are and what this nation stands for. The first story says, we the people mean just some of us. That in order to qualify, you got to be the right color, you've got to come from the right family, you've got to worship the right way. It says that even though we got rid of a king, that was the whole point of the revolution, there's still a caste system in America, a pecking order of who makes decisions and who obeys, who gets opportunity and who is obliged to serve. And that story is policed by fear and by force. And it tries to convince people that for their group to win, another group's got to lose. It tries to convince people that if somebody doesn't look like you or doesn't think like you or practice religion exactly the way you do, they must be a threat to your way of life and need to be put in their place. That's how Donald Trump thinks about America. That's what Make America Great Again means. Putting people like him back in charge even when they don't know what the hell they're doing. So that's one story, and that story's been part of America. You can pretend it hasn't been, but you can get rid of, you can try to whitewash school books and you know, go to national parks and say, let's get rid of that, and that sign that says Native Americans used to live here. You can do all that, but that story has always been part of America. And that story isn't even new. It isn't even uniquely American. For most of human history, it's the way society worked. There was a hierarchy, and there were lords, and then there were peasants, and some people had everything, and some people had nothing. There are all kinds of countries that still operate that way. For a long time, that story of caste and privilege and concentrated power was the law of the land in America. For decades, if you looked like me, you were property. For decades, if you were a woman or a white man who did not own property, you couldn't vote. For decades, if you were an Irishman or an Italian immigrant and you tried to apply for a job, we're not hiring. For decades, if you were Jewish or Asian, don't bother applying to this school. If you were Native American, they didn't even talk about you, even though you were here first. But here's the thing, New Jersey. From the very start, there was another story born of this nation's true revolutionary spirit. And that story says, we the people means what it says, that all of us are included, that we are not subjects, we are citizens, defined not by race or religion or gender or sexual orientation, but by our commitment to a common creed and a willingness to accept not just the privileges, but responsibilities that come with citizenship. That's what made the American experiment unique. Not just the size of our economy, not just our military might, it was that idea that you could get people from every corner of the globe And they could come here and decide, you know, I pledge allegiance to this flag. I will defend this country. I will make a life for myself here. And we could all get along. That's what made America special. And through generations of struggle and sacrifice, through the faith of abolitionists, the struggle of suffragists, through a civil war and civil rights protests, through union organizing drives, through reform initiatives, through investment in public education, year by year, decade by decade, we move closer to those founding ideals, and in the process, we inspired the world. That's the story I believe in New Jersey. An America in which we all deserve equal protection under the law, and no one's above. In America, every child has a chance at a good education, and anybody who's willing to work and find a job or start a business and make a decent living. In America, where we don't fear each other, but we look out for one another. And we find ways to work together. And if we want that story to continue, then we need leaders who believe in it too. Leaders who will tell the truth and take responsibility. Leaders who will tackle hard problems and bring people together instead of dividing them. Leaders who won't serve big bosses in Washington or big corporate donors, but instead will serve the people who put them there. In Jersey, we need leaders like Mikie Sherrill. So yes, I am still hopeful. Yes, I still believe our best days are ahead of us. Here's the thing, New Jersey, even somebody as tough and talented as Mikie can't make it happen alone. Because all of us are being tested right now.